Okay, let's record. Okay, let's record. Okay, welcome everybody to what hopefully will be the first of many classes and discussions on the basis of trust and faith in God. What is the motivation for this series? So we are all navigating difficult times. We meaning the Jewish people, and I would like to believe good people everywhere are navigating difficult times, experiencing the terrible massacres on October 7th, the challenges to the soldiers who are fighting in Gaza, the struggles of anti-Semitism in the world. And it brings up questions of faith, and it brings up questions of trust. And we don't necessarily specifically have to focus on what's going on in Israel. We can focus more broadly on the principles of faith and trust. And in focusing on the principles of faith and trust, we are going to strengthen our relationship with God and strengthen our faith in God, strengthen our trust in God, and be able to navigate more smoothly both the situation abroad, the situation locally, and other challenges that we face in our own lives that bring up these various different questions. Faith and trust are fundamentals to what it means to be a Jew. What's unique about the Chabad approach and the Hasidic approach is that a relationship with God is a very real thing. It's not abstract, because as it is in the teachings of Hasidic philosophy and Chabad philosophy in particular, God is not abstract. God is not in some other realm and created this universe and put a big battery pack and is sitting back with the fire burning and drinking his tea and watching the show. God is very much engaged and an active part in everything that goes on in the world and in the universe. And according to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, in the things that are going on in each of our daily lives, both in terms of the human life, animal life, vegetable life, and inanimate creatures and inanimate things, God is part of that and involved in that, and everything is masterfully put together to fulfill the objective of creation. So if God is very much an active part of our lives, then that means that he's available to us for a relationship. So the first thing is to have that relationship, to nurture that relationship, and then to navigate the questions that come up for us in terms of that relationship. What are the things that we are taught to believe? How do we navigate within our own lives the challenges that we face when it comes to trusting in God, especially when we are faced with difficult times? How do we navigate that? So my goal here is not to do too much talking, but to actually reach into the Rebbe's teachings that have been compiled in a book called In Good Hands, which is basically a compilation of letters and teachings from the Rebbe about matters of trust and faith in God, and to use that as a springboard to highlight and point out these various different things. If you have the book, that's great. If not, I will include a link in the YouTube notes, and you are invited to purchase the book. We'll also share the screen on a weekly basis of the particular letters that we're studying that particular week. I'm not necessarily going to read the entire letters. I'm going to kind of focus on some of the highlights of those letters, and I also invite questions. You can question by unmuting yourself. You can question by submitting a chat. And for those that are watching this at a later time or listening to this at a later time, you're always welcome to send me an email to rabbi@chabadintown.org or submit questions on in the chat on the YouTube, and we will try to address them as we move forward. Our goal right now is to do this for the next 12 weeks, and then we'll see from there. So without further ado, let us jump into the first letter. This letter was written in Hebrew initially, and it was sent with translation to Jewish chaplains serving in the U.S. Army during World War II, as we can see the date of the letter, 1944. This letter I will read through briefly because it's a very short letter, and I want to highlight one particular point of the letter. Greetings and blessings. The Rebbe writes, you have no doubt, again, he's addressing the chaplains, you have no doubt duly received all the printed matter that we mailed you. By the way, the Rebbe was not yet the official Rebbe in 1944. The previous Rebbe was still alive and was going to live for another 6 years until 1950. The Rebbe became Rebbe in 1951, assumed the leadership. Actually, this Shabbos, this Shabbat, the 10th of Shvat, is the anniversary of the Rebbe's assuming of the leadership, which is also the day of the passing of the previous Rebbe. So the Rebbe was working for the previous Rebbe in capacity of leading some of the organizations, and this is a letter that the Rebbe penned to the chaplains at that time. And the Rebbe writes like this: you have no doubt duly received all the printed matter that we mailed you. We are certain that it is proving to be helpful, especially in fortifying the spirit of Torah and Yiddishkeit, Judaism, among the troops, and lending them courage and in buttressing their trust in God. Okay, so we see that the spirit of Torah and Judaism is what we lean into to draw courage and trust in difficult times. That's a very important foundational idea. There's all kinds of resources out there, and many of them are very helpful. There are many different ways to find the inner strength that we need to navigate difficult times. But as a Jew, we lean into the Torah. The Torah is our life, and we lean into the Torah to draw the wisdom and the spirit, the energy of Torah, to help us navigate through these challenging times. It goes without saying that at all times we are ready to be, the Rebbe is talking about the organization, we are ready to be of assistance in these matters to the best of our ability, and you will no doubt let us know if an appropriate opportunity presents itself. The big thing I want to focus on in this letter is these next two lines. You have been granted the sacred task of serving as the spiritual leader and guide for all the troops under your influence. So there is an empowerment that comes into play here. And it's a fundamental idea of recognizing ourselves not as victims, but as empowered. It's a starting point for everything. If we see ourselves as a victim, then our relationship with God, number one, is a negative one, meaning that God is out to get us, number one. Number two, it's not very empowering. It's debilitating. But if we see that we have a sacred task, and each of us do have a sacred task, as we'll touch upon other letters as we go through this book, each of us are put on this earth for a very specific purpose. And when we recognize that purpose, we're immediately elevated to move into a position of responsibility and action. In this case, the chaplains are spiritual leaders, and there are guides for the troops under their influence, both by raising their spirits so that they will be firm in their trust that there will be a complete victory, and so that they will not stand in dread of the enemy, and arousing them to be firm in their religious belief and to make staunch efforts to observe the Torah and its mitzvos to the best of their capacity and possibility. The verse in the Torah that the Rebbe refers to essentially in this comment is, it says, Kiseitze la milchama al oivecha, when you go out to battle on your enemies. And one of the reasons that the Torah uses that term, on your enemies, as opposed to against your enemies, is that when a person goes out to battle, in whatever the endeavor might be, it could be actual war, as it is in the case of this letter, or it could be a spiritual kind of struggle. The negativity of the animal soul, the body trying to bring us down and give negative self-talk, or temptations or inner challenges that we face. When we have this notion that we are rooted in a divine power to be over our enemies, that we have the capacity to be successful, and that it's up to us to do that work, and that we are empowered by God to be successful, that is a changes the nature of how we approach the struggle, recognizing that God is present with us and navigating this journey. And then, as a second point to that, it arouses us to be firm in our religious belief and to do the actions. We're going to find throughout the Rebbe's teachings and guidance that there is a constant focus on action. right? Action takes us out of ourselves and puts us in a it takes us out of the self-pity. It takes us out of the victimhood. It takes us out of a preoccupation with how we think and how we feel, and it moves us into an action which immediately, as soon as we let go of the self-preoccupation and we're beginning to work outwards, we immediately are relieved of the self-talk and the mind games that ultimately bring us down and make us negative. In this case, besides the positive attitude that we will be victorious, there's also the point to engage in action. And in this case, the action the Rebbe is specifically referring to is Torah and mitzvahs. And as the verse says, for God, the Lord of hosts, abides among them and constantly watches over them and scrutinizes all their actions. Their camp should therefore be holy. And this is a specific reference to the struggle of war, that when we are out in battle, God, the Lord of hosts, is with us in battle. And that's true whether you are a soldier literally on the battlefront, or whether we are in battle with our own animal soul or our evil inclination. We have God present with us, and therefore we are assured victory if we so choose to. As it is written in the Torah of Moshe, when you go out to encamp against your enemies, be on your guard against anything evil, for God your Lord moves about in the midst of your camp to save you and to deliver your enemies to you. Let your camp therefore be holy. So this is the first letter. Any questions or comments on this letter? Okay, I'll take that as a note. We're going to move on to letter number 2. 1946, greetings and blessings. In response to your question, in response to your questions, with regard to the concept of bitachon, which is Hebrew for trust, and the question of whether it is necessary to create a medium for divine blessing. So the premise of this question is a simple and fundamentally theological one. If I am trusting that God is all powerful and God is capable of taking care of all the things that He is powerful for and capable of, then why do I need to do anything? Why do I need to make any effort? God can take care of everything. Why do I need to pray? Why do I need to go to a doctor? Why do I need to go to work? Right? Why do I need to do any of these things if God is all powerful, which is why I'm putting trust in Him, that God is powerful and capable of delivering on all the things that I need or want, then why do I need to make the effort? So that's the question that's being presented here. So the Rebbe continues, you write that you have heard it said that righteous men do not require a medium. Accordingly, you raise the question why Abraham found it necessary to employ a tactic telling Sarah, please say that you are my sister. So this is the story when Abraham and Sarah had arrived in Israel, and there was a famine, and they headed south to Egypt. And as they were approaching Egypt, Abraham says to Sarah, do me a kindness, and we're going to a place where people are preoccupied with superficial things. And if you tell them that you're my wife, they're going to kill me and take you. So instead of telling them that you're my wife, tell them that you're my sister. And this way they'll spare me. And there's all kinds of interesting discussions. What was Abraham setting Sarah up? He was protecting himself. Lots of very interesting discussions to have around that. But the technical question in this letter is, why did Abraham need to do that? Why did he need to create a medium for God's protection if he believed in God and he trusted in God? In resolution, it is obvious that as a rule, apart from having bitachon, trust, one must also create a medium. Indeed, the entire Tanakh, the entire teachings of the Torah, the prophets and the scriptures, and the teachings of the Talmudic sages are filled with illustrations of this concept. Endeavors to create a medium within the natural order do not contradict the concept of bitachon, of trust. Since every Jew has been told by God, the Lord in whom he trusts, that he will bless him in all that he does, and not when he sits idly. So the Torah says that God will bless you in all that you do. Clearly, the Torah is directly instructing us that God's blessing comes into the things that we do, that we need to do our part. We need to create a vessel. We need to do our part and not sit back, and then we receive God's blessing. In other words, Trust in God is not something that we've figured out theologically how to make it work. It's not a formula that we concocted. It's the formula that the Torah tells us is what works. And the Torah's formula for trust in God is that we do something to create a receptacle to receive the blessing that comes with that trust. As the Rebbe elaborates. From this, one can conclude two things. A, employing a vessel and the reason for making the vessel must be dictated only by the fact that we were thus commanded. If, however, one considers the vessel and its rationale to be beneficial or harmful in their own right, he is debasing the attribute of bitachon, which means as follows. If I think that God needs me and what I am doing to receive God's blessing, then I am debasing what trust is all about. God doesn't need us. God is telling us that this is the mechanism through which he provides that blessing. Let me say that again in different words. God is all powerful. And because God is all powerful, he could send the blessing of health, of livelihood, of healthy and wonderful developed children, and any other challenge that we're facing. God can provide the blessing and the resolution for that on his own. He doesn't need us fundamentally. God commands us to make that vessel because that is part of the structure that God created for how the trust mechanism works. That is the formula. The formula is you make a vessel and then trust in God, and God will bring the blessing. And I'll deviate from the Rebbe's direct words here, that it's very fascinating in my experience, and I find that people who invest themselves in trust in God will often find this, that we create a vessel thinking that the vessel is the direct channel through which the blessing will come, right? So entrepreneurs often find this to be true because they see it in very vivid terms. So you come up with this great business idea and you invest all this energy in one particular strategy, and then out of left field, something that you had no involvement in shows up to actually provide the success. Or it might be that you have this whole parenting strategy around how you're going to raise your child, and then out of left field, the child gets exposed to some kind of teacher, some kind of friend that you had no connection to and no involvement in orchestrating, and that person has a profound influence on that child and helps them grow up in an amazing way. How does that work? If God needs my blessing, then why, if God needs my vessel, then why did the blessing show up from some left field? The answer is that God doesn't need your blessing. God doesn't need your vessel. God created the formula for us to create the vessel as a part of the formula in order for us to invest ourselves and be a partner with God. But ultimately, the blessing is God's blessing on its own. And that's why we'll put the effort in one place, but the result actually comes from somewhere else to remind us that it is God's blessing that provides the actual result, not the effort that we put in. B, one is commanded to do only what he is capable of doing. For the Holy One, blessed be he, does not confront his created beings with unfair demands. Accordingly, if at some point one is incapable of making a vessel, that itself is a sign that the merciful one has exempted him from the responsibility in this instance, and this should not weaken his bitachon, his trust that his request will be fulfilled. Again, the point being that it's a formula. And if the formula is not applicable because the tools are not available to you, then that should not diminish the one's trust, and it doesn't diminish the capacity that the trust in God can actually deliver on that result. And oftentimes that happens is when you've kind of done everything that you can, and you can't do anything else. You've really done everything you can. You can't do anything else. One should not become despondent well, I can't do anything else, and therefore it's not going to work out. No, the fact that you can't do anything else means that God wants you to let go and trust in God that he will deliver on the outcome. That is our session for today. I'm happy to take some quick questions, and we will be back here again next Thursday at noon. Any questions? All right. Again, please send emails, send text messages. I will put the book link in the show notes on YouTube. And if you don't own the book yet, please buy it. Read ahead a couple of letters and write questions if you have them, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Good job.
And everybody have a great Thursday.
Thank you.
Take care.